the secondary, this is a program that for the better part of 20 years has boasted producing more NFL draft picks than any secondary in the country and high-level draft picks. And then all of a sudden, it seems like forever that Jeffrey Okudah was on the field in that bunch in 2019. It was only 2 seasons removed, but it just seems like the level of play in the secondary has just been guys chasing wide receivers all over the field in the last 2 years, and it just has taken a marked drop-off. And maybe Denzell Burke would be the one guy that it has at times met a higher standard, but for the most part, downplay in the secondary.
I think when you look at like what I just said about kind of the depth or the lack of experience going into last season, the secondary is a key example of that. And especially once you start to see some injuries, Josh Proctor breaks his leg in week 2 against Oregon. You have Bryson Shaw out there, not expected to be a guy that was starting. Ronnie Hickman starting for the first time. You mentioned Denzell Burke, a true freshman a year ago who broke into that rotation. Cameron Brown had played before, but he was coming off an Achilles tear, so he hadn't played too much. You just had a lot of inexperience in the secondary, and I think now a lot of those guys have played, as I said before, with the linebackers, but you're going to start to see that talent emerge because they've been there, they've done it. As Ryan Day said, they've made their mistakes and they've learned from them. A guy like Denzell Burke, when he started against Minnesota last year, I mean, imagine being a guy as a true freshman, not even the highest recruited cornerback in Ohio State's class. You're asked to go out there and be the number 1 corner in a Big Ten game. That's your first game. That's your first experience of college football. So now he's done it, and the rest of these guys beyond him, Jordan Hancock, who was also a freshman last year, J.K. Johnson. Hancock's been a little banged up in fall camp, but he should be okay for the season. You've got some depth. Jair Brown's a freshman who lost his black stripe, which in the Buckeye world means you've impressed in practice. And so they've got some depth and safety, I think, too. Jim Knowles wants a safety-driven defense. That's what he's called it this whole offseason. And Josh Proctor's back. He's healthy. Ronnie Hickman is into a second year of being a starter and a key contributor for this team. They added Tanner McAllister from Oklahoma State, who knows Jim Knowles' defense inside and out, having played in it the last few years. And then depth-wise, you've got guys like Cameron Martinez, a freak athlete who can play a number of different positions. Lathan Ransom, who's back from an injury as well. Guys like that can step in and play these positions. And I think Court Williams is another one. I think they'll use some rotation. Jim Knowles hasn't been much in the way of rotating with his defenses in the secondary, but he's also not had the talent that he has at Ohio State. And I think if guys prove that they're capable of going out there and filling a role, then they certainly will be. So I think, the main takeaway I think from this defensive conversation is that these guys are more ready than they were a year ago, and positions are pretty much solidified. Last year, this time, we were talking about, who's going to start here, who's going to start there. We didn't really have a ton of answers. And this year, I feel like there weren't a ton of competitions, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because a lot of those guys were back and a year more experience now.